Hi you guys and welcome. I thought I'd just make a video on this subject because there's some people that commented a few things that on a 61 that they're not really aware of. So I thought maybe we would just do a video on what unique things were on a 61 Beetle. They were actually, people say the 67 was rare. It actually is not rare. There was twice as many 67s made as in 1961, roughly. And 67 year was a 1 year only, and so is the 61. There was a lot of 1 year only items on this car. So let's kind of look at some of the unique things about the 1961 Beetle. The stuff that I really enjoy about it. So first of all, this was the first year of the 40 horse engine. They had a mid-year change in 61. They had, I believe it was a recall on the bastard 40 horse that they first put in it. It was a bad engine and they had a lot of problems with them and they had oiling issues, all this stuff. So what they did is they recalled those, as far as I know, and they put in new engines in all the old first 6 month only cars. So this is one of the first 6 month of 1961. So it has some mid-year changes. The 61 kind of is like the 55. The 55 and the 61 share some things. The 61 was the end of an era and the beginning of a new era. The same with the 55. The 55 actually has unique things on it, and I would almost like to make a whole video on just that car alone because it is so unique, and it was only made for 8 months, 7 months. So it's kind of really interesting. But this one here had a 6 month change, so they had a lot of 6 month only things. One of the 6 month only things they had was this color. This color is called pastel blue. I think it's L261. And they're really pretty rare to find, and they were pretty cool looking cars. So the 61 had the hydride green steering wheel. So that was only available for 6 months in 1961. So that makes it kind of a neat thing to have. So I thought that was one thing that I really enjoyed about this car. That it had that hydride green steering wheel, which is really rare. The other thing is the engines, because it was the first 6 months, were the bastard 40 horse, and those had all been recalled. So that's a nice, interesting story as well. So one of the things people notice is they've said, hey, Mike, you have a 4-tab hood, and you have this non-H apron, which actually was the way it came. So early 61 remember what Volkswagen liked to do is when they ran into the end of a run, they would use up what they had. So they had all these 4-tab hoods, and they put the 4-tab hoods on the 61s. First run of 61, so mid-year change, they had the 4-tab hood. Why do I know that? Because this car was the original hood, and it was in perfect, it was still original paint and everything on it, and it was a 4-tab. So in early 61, they had the 4-tab. In later 61, they went to the 3-hole. And I believe that the 3-hole hood with the 3 holes here still had a flat hood. I've seen those before, and they were 61 only. And then they went to the raised hood with the little bump in it for the emblem. Other things that are interesting about a 61 is it has the bigger gas tank in it, but it has no gas gauge. And as you can see, there's a place here for the gas gauge, but there is none in the car. So in 62 is when they kind of modernized Volkswagens. They were kind of primitive before that, and that to me is the kind of desirability of the cars, because it was just so primitive. It didn't even have a gas gauge. The whole story of that is just amazing to people. But it did have the bigger tank, or the different shaped tank. I don't know if it's actually bigger. It might be, but it has a different shape, and it has a place for the gas gauge on it, but no gas gauge yet. So it's a 1 year only gas tank. Another thing that was around in 61, 62, they had gone to the springs, and they were still using the prop rod here that usually would cause in your hood being bent and getting a kink in it and all the other stuff, because the guys would forget that you had to lift up the hood a little bit and let that thing down, and they just try and push it shut and bend the hood. So you still had some of those early car things that were on the earlier models that the 62 and 3 didn't have. And also, again, one of the things that's really desirable, a lot of guys like, is the fact that it still had the small taillights. In 61, in 62, they got rid of these and went to the bigger taillights. This was the last year of the small taillights. One of the things that was nice about the 61 that the 60 didn't have was it had the full synchro transmission. So another thing that people don't know about that is the full synchro had synchros in all the gears, but it had a different fourth gear. So in the earlier cars with the 36 horse, they had the 0.82 fourth gear. So it was 0.82 to 1 fourth gear. It wasn't, no, Volkswagens were never 1 to 1 in fourth. They were like an overdrive. All of them were. So they had changed to the 0.89 fourth gear. So it has 4.375 gears, 437s is what we call them. Had 437 gears and a 89 fourth. So it really felt like that you had a little more power in fourth gear on a 40 horse, but it actually was very little difference at all, because the 36 horse had a taller fourth and the 40 horse had a shorter fourth. So even though, you know, you got that extra 4 horsepower, it was probably unnoticeably difference. If you had the same transmission, it would probably be about the same. I'm not sure why they did that, but it was kind of an interesting thing that they did in 1961. And they continued that transmission on through up to 66. And in 1967, they went to the 412. So all the 40 horses all had the 437 gears. That's why maybe you notice if you have an old transmission in your car, the original one, which this one has, that the motor kind of screams when you're going down the highway. Now, I'm no expert on these. I used to have all this stuff memorized when I was younger, but I just kind of go by what I'm seeing now. Another thing you'll notice, the 61 has the grab handle. The 60 did not. And that was kind of a nice thing, because the car still didn't have seat belts. And if you notice when you're driving a VW, they kind of move you around a little bit. So having something to grab onto, it's really nice, was a handy thing to have. And that started in 1961. Another really cool thing about the 61 that was not in the 1960 is the old windshield washer right here. So this one had a windshield washer reservoir that they had made. They had changed the whole base of this along with that gas tank. And if you notice, your other ones had that rectangle shape with a little triangle shaped inside. This one has this rounded thing, and that was what gave you room for the washer reservoir. And that started in 61 as well. So they had a lot of unique things. The other thing that they did in 61 that they did not have in 1960, and I almost think that this was kind of a problem, but it was probably, from a manufacturing standpoint, made them a lot easier to make volume, was they changed the wiring harness to the slip-on connector style setup from the screw connectors, which I'm sure labor-wise in assembling took a lot more time to assemble the one with the screw-on connectors, but those were a lot more reliable from a maintenance standpoint than these old slip-on connectors. Seemed like that was always an issue from there on with Volkswagens. The earlier ones had a lot less wiring problems. So again, the earlier ones had in the back what they call an H apron. And so 1960 has the H apron, and then this year was the first year of this style apron. So this apron here was made from 61 to 62 and let's see 63, and then they changed it. They had the same shape, but they had two holes that had threads in them right here, and that was to put the closure from the later models with the push button. That we used to take those, and we used to thread these here, put some nuts in here and put them on our earlier cars, and then put a deck lid from a later 63 or 4, back when these cars were cheap, and we used to put washers underneath them, and that's where they came up with that whole thing that has your deck lid standing up off of the bottom. That's how they came up with that whole thing. Was guys like us, we used to put stack washers up or put a spacer underneath the bolts, and that would raise up the deck lid and give you about 1.5 inches or so of space here. And it actually really did help on the freeway, getting your car to run a little cooler. So a lot of things were 6-month only on these. The bastard 40 horse, 6-month only. They cut that off and realized it was a bad problem, and they fixed it and recalled all those cars, as far as I know. The colors, some of the colors, like this one, were 6-month only, and I don't have any idea why they didn't continue this, because this was a really nice color combination. Because along with the steering wheel, you got the shifter hydride green, and you got the grab handle hydride green. I had to actually paint that one because the original ones, it was so faded, and and you can't find them anywhere. They're like really, really rare, almost none in existence. So yeah, another thing. 1960, I think 61 is when they changed the key. The key to go the opposite direction. The key, instead of having the teeth on this side, one side, had them on the other. So kind of a weird little thing that somebody was telling me the other day. I didn't even know. But there's little things like that that are subtle that they did in 61 that they didn't do in 1960. And they're just, to me, the 61 is kind of one of the more desirable years to have when you have an old Volkswagen. It's definitely a lot more desirable to have a 61 than a 62 or 3, because it has those unique things, and the small taillights, and kind of it was kind of the end of the simple Volkswagen and the beginning of more complex stuff, where later on they had gas gauges, which is cool. I had a 62. My first car was a 62, and it had a gas gauge, and I like that. I didn't back then, when I was younger, want one without a gas gauge, but now it's kind of fun, because you're not using it as a daily driver like we were back then. And so those things are just kind of a novelty to us today. But I think it's like one of the end of the era for Volkswagens, and that's what I just wanted to share with you guys about 61s and how that they're just unique. And it was also the end of the last year of the mohair headliner too. So then after that, they went to the perforated. So anyway, all right. So so like all those old things that you enjoyed in your older cars had in 61, but then all of a sudden they just kind of cut it off and went to the more of a production car. So anyway, that's it for this, guys. I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe.